In 1993, millions of viewers waited for Quantum Leap to answer one question. Would Sam Beckett finally make it home? For 5 years, he had spent his life fixing other people's mistakes, saving marriages, stopping tragedies, giving strangers second chances. And then, the show made a decision fans still argue about decades later. Because instead of giving Sam his happy ending, Quantum Leap stranded him forever. And somehow, that ending only became sadder with time. Because years later, one cast member quietly disappeared from Hollywood. Another became permanently linked to controversial sci-fi endings. The reboot came and went, and fans still couldn't let Sam Beckett go. Because underneath the blue lights and time travel, Quantum Leap was never really about science fiction. It was about people trying to find their way home. Most people remember the leap effect, the holograms, the music, the phrase, "Oh boy."
Oh boy.
But what many fans forgot was how strange and emotional Quantum Leap actually became. One week, Scott Bakula was playing Elvis Presley before fame. The next, he was crawling around a laboratory as a chimpanzee named Bobo. Then suddenly, the show would turn dark. Sam Beckett became Lee Harvey Oswald, a blind pianist, a pregnant teenager experiencing labor pains. And somewhere along the way, this quirky NBC sci-fi series quietly transformed into one of the most emotional dramas of the early 90s. Even stranger, the actors themselves slowly started mirroring the themes of the show. Lost time, reinvention, disappearing, trying to get home. If you enjoy revisiting classic television shows like this, consider subscribing to Backtrack Television. We dive deep into the stories behind the shows people still can't forget. When Quantum Leap premiered in 1989, audiences didn't quite know what to expect. The premise sounded almost ridiculous. A scientist gets trapped leaping through time into other people's bodies, while his best friend appears as a hologram only he can see. But almost immediately, the show worked. And the reason was simple. Viewers trusted Sam Beckett. Scott Bakula played him with warmth instead of ego. He wasn't an action hero, he wasn't sarcastic, he wasn't cool in the traditional TV sense. He cared. That changed everything. Families watched Quantum Leap together because the show felt hopeful. Every episode carried the fantasy that mistakes could still be repaired, a broken marriage could survive, a lost person could recover, a tragedy could still be stopped. And at the center of it all was the friendship between Sam and Al. Sam was compassionate. Al was chaotic. One wore someone else's face every week. The other wore the loudest suits on television. And somehow, their chemistry became the emotional engine of the entire series. But behind the scenes, Quantum Leap was becoming much more ambitious than NBC probably expected. If you want to watch the full series, I put links in the description. Because underneath the science fiction gimmick, the show was quietly becoming a series about empathy. And Scott Bakula was carrying almost all of it himself. Some weeks, Scott Bakula barely recognized himself. One week, he was memorizing choreography and singing as Elvis Presley before fame changed his life forever. The next, he was hunched over inside a chimpanzee costume, crawling through a laboratory as an experimental animal named Bobo. Then suddenly, he would spend days filming emotional courtroom scenes or intimate family drama. Quantum Leap demanded total reinvention every single week. Different accents, different fears, different personalities, different emotional breakdowns. It wasn't just a television show, it was almost 97 separate movies stitched together by one exhausted lead actor. And eventually, the role started bleeding into Bakula's real life, too. Years later, he admitted the show consumed enormous amounts of time away from his family, which created a strange irony. Every week, Sam Beckett sacrificed pieces of his own life helping strangers. Meanwhile, the actor playing him was quietly losing time at home himself, and fans never really forgot it. Bakula later admitted people still approach him emotionally about the ending decades later, not because they simply remembered it, because they never really got over it. But what made Quantum Leap unforgettable wasn't just the weirdness, it was the empathy. Because no matter how bizarre the premise became, The show constantly forced Sam to experience someone else's pain, sometimes literally. In one episode, Sam leaped into a pregnant teenager preparing to give birth. Because the series established that Sam's physical body was actually traveling through time, he experienced labor pains himself through a psychosomatic connection. And suddenly, the goofy NBC sci-fi show became something unexpectedly emotional. It was trying to force audiences into someone else's experience. That emotional ambition kept getting darker. One week, Sam confronted racism in segregated Alabama. Another episode tackled sexual assault and courtroom trauma. Then came one of the show's most disturbing storylines, Lee Harvey Oswald. Instead of simply leaping into Oswald's life, Sam slowly began losing control of his own identity. For moments, it no longer felt like Sam Beckett was pretending to be Oswald. It felt like he was disappearing inside him. For a network television show in the early 90s, that was shockingly dark material. And the deeper Quantum Leap went into other people's pain, the more emotional the series became, especially for Al. At first, Al Calavici looked like comic relief, the cigars, the flirting, the ridiculous suits. But eventually, Quantum Leap revealed who Al really was. Before the series, Dean Stockwell had already survived one of Hollywood's strangest careers. He became a child actor in the 1940s. By the time Quantum Leap fans met him, he had already spent decades inside the entertainment industry, and for a while, Hollywood almost forgot him completely. The child star roles disappeared. At one point, Stockwell reportedly considered leaving acting behind entirely and working in real estate instead. Then suddenly, against all odds, Hollywood wanted him back. Strange films like Blue Velvet, Dune, and Paris, Texas transformed him into an unlikely cult actor. And then Quantum Leap gave him something even more important, a second life, which made Al's emotional storyline feel strangely personal, because underneath all the jokes, Al was lonely. The turning point came in an episode called MIA. Suddenly, viewers learned the truth. Al had been a prisoner of war in Vietnam. His wife Beth believed he was dead. She moved on because she thought she had no choice. And in a single episode, the funny hologram became the emotional wound of the entire series. Even off-screen, Stockwell carried unusual empathy for younger performers. Crew members later said he was especially protective of child actors on set because he understood what early fame could do to a person. And suddenly, the goofy time travel show about holograms and blue lights became something unexpectedly painful. Because behind Al's humor, viewers finally saw grief. But the real reason people never stopped thinking about Quantum Leap was because of what happened at the very end. Because the finale didn't just conclude the story, it transformed the meaning of everything that came before it. And once viewers saw those final words on the screen, the show stopped feeling hopeful and started feeling haunting. By 1993, Quantum Leap had evolved into something much stranger and more emotional than its creators originally imagined. The final episode was called Mirror Image, and from the beginning, it felt different. Quiet, dreamlike, almost unsettling. Sam encounters a mysterious bartender who seems to understand the leaps better than anyone else, and slowly Sam realizes something shocking. He may not have been trapped all along. For years, viewers believed Sam was desperately trying to get home. Now it suddenly seemed possible that he actually could. And then Quantum Leap made the decision that defined its legacy forever. Instead of returning to his own life, Sam chooses to save Al's. He travels to Beth and tells her Al is still alive in Vietnam. So this time, she waits for him. Al returns home. They stay together. They have 4 daughters. For the first time in the entire series, Al gets peace. And then comes the final title card. Dr. Sam Beckett never returned home. That single sentence changed Quantum Leap forever. Suddenly, the entire show became tragic. A man spent years helping strangers repair their lives, only to lose his own future in the process. And somehow, the ending became even sadder after real time passed. Because while Sam Beckett remained frozen in television history, the actors kept moving forward. Scott Bakula escaped one iconic sci-fi role, only to walk directly into another. In 2001, he became Captain Jonathan Archer on Star Trek Enterprise, and once again, he inherited impossible expectations. Some fans initially rejected him. Others only saw Sam Beckett. But over time, audiences embraced Archer for the exact same reason they loved Sam. Bakula made him feel human, warm, hopeful, trustworthy. And strangely enough, Enterprise eventually became known for another controversial ending. Somehow, Scott Bakula became attached to two science fiction shows remembered partly for divisive finales. It was almost like television never quite knew how to let his characters go. But by then, Bakula himself had changed too. After losing so much time to Quantum Leap, he reportedly negotiated heavily around family life during Enterprise. The older version of Scott Bakula was trying not to lose more real time to television. And unlike many nostalgic TV stars, his life remained remarkably grounded. No scandals, no implosions, no public collapse. The actor who spent years playing lost men quietly became one of television's most comforting presences. Meanwhile, Dean Stockwell slowly disappeared from public life. After another acclaimed sci-fi role in Battlestar Galactica, health problems forced him into retirement. The man who played television's funniest hologram gradually faded away from Hollywood. He focused on visual art, lived quietly in New Mexico. And in 2021, Dean Stockwell died at age 85. And after his death, Quantum Leap started feeling different, less like nostalgia, more like memory. Even the reboot carried that sadness. NBC revived Quantum Leap in 2022 with a new cast and a new leaper. But decades later, audiences were still searching for the same thing: closure. Scott Bakula chose not to return. And despite continuing the mythology, the reboot still couldn't answer the question fans cared about most: what happened to Sam Beckett? 2 seasons later, the revival was canceled, and somehow, Sam was still lost. Maybe that's why Quantum Leap still lingers so deeply with people who grew up watching it. Not because of the science fiction, but because time passed. The actors got older. One of them disappeared forever. The reboot came and went, and somehow, the emotional wound never fully closed. As children, audiences saw adventure. As adults, they saw regret, lost time, sacrifice, loneliness, the fantasy of getting one more chance to fix something broken. Even the people behind the scenes reflected those themes. Most casual viewers never realized the voice of Ziggy belonged to Deborah Pratt, one of the show's writers, producers, and emotional architects. The machine guiding Sam through time was secretly being voiced by someone helping shape the soul of the entire series. And maybe that's why Quantum Leap aged so differently from many science fiction shows of its era. The effects became dated, but the humanity didn't. Because underneath the holograms and time travel, Quantum Leap understood something painfully human. Sometimes the people who spend their lives helping everyone else quietly lose pieces of themselves along the way. And somewhere out there, Sam Beckett is still leaping. But this wasn't the only cast whose story took a surprising turn. Some of the biggest shows of the 90s had behind-the-scenes moments that completely changed their legacy. And one of them is even more shocking than this. If you think this story was unexpected, wait until you see what happened next. Click the video on your screen now. Before you go, let me know in the comments, do you think Sam Beckett should have made it home? And what's the one Quantum Leap episode you still remember most? If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Backtrack Television for more stories behind the shows that still stay with people decades later. Thanks for watching.